Welcome to the only way I'll ever buy a new PlayStation 5. I'm sure y'all know, and probably even seen the trailer for Forza Horizon 5 on PS5. Obviously, I have interest in that, but it certainly ain't enough for me to get PS5. Honestly, the only way that I would even consider it is if Forza Motorsport and Microsoft Flight Simulator, preferably all of the Microsoft exclusives that are at least fairly popular, although really the main two that I care about, other than Horizon 5 or Forza Motorsport and Flight Simulator, preferably they'd all go to PlayStation, but who knows on that. I think the only thing confirmed, or at least of the games that I care about so far, is Horizon 5, but we'd see. On PS5, I'm sure y'all get where I'm going with it. The only way I'd even consider it is if all of Horizon 5, Motorsport, or 8, really, and Flight Simulator, 2024 preferably, the newer one, go to PS5. What's very weird to me is that, given that Forza Horizon 5 also came out on the Xbox One, that they wouldn't go ahead and release it on the PS4 and make that much more money as well. Obviously, the PS4 doesn't have as big of a player base anymore, but you think just any amount more money that Sony could possibly make from it, they would. So that's a very weird decision to me. But I'm pretty sure even if Horizon 5 were to release on PS4, I probably still wouldn't get it because, one, the credit card thing, I can't even directly from PS4 get a game anymore, and I've discussed that before. Sony doesn't want my money directly. I'm not even going to bother with it. But even if that wasn't the case, it still had like 700 or 800 or something like that hours on Xbox, and from how I understand it, the progress does not transfer, so it's not really worried about playing the single player. Again, the single player in terms of the story and stuff is boring. I've discussed that in the past. Overall, Horizon 5 is an excellent game. It just has a lot of microtransactions, and the story mode is bland in terms of the actual story and all that itself, and I don't really feel like going through all that again. So, there's that. And honestly, I'm not so sure how it would run on a PS4. Maybe that's the straightforward reason why it did, but you'd think if it would run on Xbox One, it could at least somewhat run on PS4. But who knows? The point being is that, yeah, if it turns out that I can just one day within, I'll give it the next 3 or 4 years, I can just trade in my Xbox Series S and my PS4, I guess, plus its controllers as well. Probably do a bit of research on it, but from how I understand it, I think a PS4 controller would work on a PS5, so I might keep controller, but even now, my controller ain't in a Danish condition, so if they don't take it, then I'll obviously just keep it anyway if they just refuse to take the controller, but I don't know, it just be iffy on the controller, but I definitely trade in all of the Xbox. I trade in with its controller and all that, too. No point keeping the Xbox controller if I do not have any type of Microsoft product by that point, but if I can trade them both in for a decent price, whether it's directly to Sony or just enough to where I can get some decent money for it, preferably directly to Sony, but that's not realistic in the modern day for Sony to give him remotely as good of a deal as I could just get off selling it to someone that actually wants it. But whatever. And I don't have to pay much for PS5 after the trade-in, like whether it's directly or not. I'd say if I can get it under, also including a controller, if I do trade in the controller. If not, I guess I just use a PS4 controller if it works, whatever. But a DualSense and all that sounds cool. I don't think it actually make me better at the video game, so it's not that big of a deal. It's not worth an extra 60, 70, whatever they are dollars now for a whole controller. So if I could get the whole package, especially with the controller, but again, it's not make or break with that. for under $200, then that's probably how I'd go about it. After trading in the PS4 and the Series S. But again, that's only if Motorsport and Flight Simulator 2024 also on the PS5. I have quite a bit of progress on Motorsport, say maybe right about 100 hours, but that was the game that got hit the hardest with the whole credit card situation. Probably at this point, between multiple videos, I've talked about over an hour, so I'm not going to get into that too much. Plus, the game just wasn't exactly the Danish either. It's slightly improved over time, but even from how I understand it now, it's still at the Danish, but I can't play it anyway, so that's irrelevant for the time being. But the point is it's not that big of a deal with Motorsport. If I'd have to restart it, it's still pretty... What sucks, but from how I understand it, that's a pretty easy game in which you can just rubber band and make progress. From how I understand it, that still works decently well, so whatever, I could do that. And Flight Simulator 2024, I've not played at all, because that happened, that came out after the whole credit card debacle, so no big deal there. Again, it would be cool if a lot of other mainstream Microsoft titles come over as well, but frankly, those are really about the only ones that I care about. I mean, best case scenario, really, is I can just find PS5 used for real cheap and go from there. I don't particularly care if it's with a disc or not. I just go to cheaper, which chances are that would be the one without the disc. But I mean, if I can find one with a disc where the disc drive doesn't work, but the whole system in general works fine, other than that, that might probably be the best way to go about it on a used market. But I mean, that's the point of the title, getting a new one. I wouldn't be surprised, really, many years down the road if I do end up getting a used PS5. Well, I'm not exactly so enthused about getting GTA on Gran Turismo 8 at launch. I guess I'd wait for a big discount, or maybe I don't even get it at all. PS5 is a different story if I can get the Microsoft stuff on there. I would not even consider PS5 whatsoever. It gets quite a bit of Microsoft stuff. The only thing that would maybe even remotely have me consider it for of the Sony side of things is if there's a Driveclub 2 announced. But at this point, if there were to be a Driveclub 2 announced, you'd think it would have to take so much longer development, given that Driveclub 1 started development in 2005, 9 years before it released. That Driveclub 2 would probably not even come out to the PS6 at this point, and realistically, that wouldn't happen anyway. It'd kind of be the only thing I'd even remotely consider it on the Sony side of things. So, yeah, there's that. And honestly, I like the Series S in terms of the actual platform perfectly fine. It's small and it's quiet. That right there beats PS5 anyway, what PS5 would realistically get. Again, if somehow I just get extremely lucky and I can get some used PS5 Pro that maybe is dented up or whatever, but the actual console itself works perfectly fine, and that's the one that I happen to find for cheap, is great, but I feel like the changes that happening are extremely slow. So just right there, the Xbox Series S definitely wins of what PS5 would realistically end up getting, whether it's new or used. Series S is just simply going to be a lot smaller and a lot quieter, and I like that. But it's not really worth keeping it if all the other Microsoft goes to it, especially still with the old credit card situation. Again, Sony's no better with the credit card situation, but still, I mean, a lot of the reasons it's like an Xbox to begin with, too, is they had the whole Microsoft Rewards thing where I didn't even have to spend any money and I could just get the points. But now when the points require a credit card to even redeem, that becomes kind of irrelevant, doesn't it? Yeah. I remember the good old days of, like, not even quite 4 years ago. I remember those days. So, yeah, I mean, while I like the Xbox Series S as a console, a lot of the stuff surrounding it is not really the dandiest, and really the main killer for it, as I've said from the very beginning as well, is it simply only saves 3 minutes of footage. Even with PS4, the standard base edition, up to an hour. Right there, that's pretty cotton picking big thing for being a content creator who doesn't have the money for a capture card. So yeah, that's a pretty big one right there, especially for the making content side of things. Granted, I haven't done tons of research on PS5, but I would hope if the PS4 saves an hour of footage, that the PS5 would save at least an hour of footage as well, and also has its version of Share Factory and stuff like that, to where I can edit the videos directly on the PS5 as well. I would think I wouldn't have to do too much research on it. I would hope that it just straightforward does. And so, there's that. And I did say early on I'd give it maybe a few years. If it gets to the point where it's already, the PS6 is on, like, obvious trajectory, like there's already leaks and stuff for it, and especially if there's already official stuff about it, and then it happens to start getting motorsport and flight simulator and other stuff, then I'm not so sure of getting a new one, because then I'm probably just end up waiting on PS6 anyway, because realistically, I mean, the way that inflation and all that's going, I don't think by the time the PS6 comes out that it would be all much more expensive than a PS5, really, because that's just how it ended up working with inflation and stuff. One thing that I'm very much glad about is one of not necessarily the absolute main reasons, but a good up there reason of why I got a Series S new, like not long at all after it came out, is because I kind of just predicted the inflation of, oh, well, there's a worldwide pandemic, so the prices are going to come up to the point of, I really don't even think if I were to wait to, say, 2025, for an example, but any year down the line, it would necessarily be much cheaper, so I might as well get it now, because it's not like I'd be paying less a few years down the line anyway. And I was right about that, but frankly, I would not have gotten an Xbox Series anything, any Microsoft product really, if I knew back then that even just Horizon 5 was going to move to it, and especially if it ends up being others later, which seems fairly likely. I don't think anything's confirmed from how I understand it with Motorsport, Flight Simulator, or others, but it seems fairly likely. So, yeah, even just that would have been enough to get it, especially not to mention the whole credit card debacle, too. That's just even more of it. Nail in the coffin. If I were to know either of those things back then, I wouldn't have gotten it, but it's not the worst this has ever made, because I correctly predicted inflation. From how I understand it, a new Series S is still as much, if not even more expensive than it was at launch for the most part. Maybe some individual stores in individual areas have deals or whatever, but I think from how I understand it, for the most part, I made a pretty good decision price-wise on that, and the console and the controller still both work perfectly fine, albeit I barely even use it now that the whole credit card debacle is almost a year in the past now, so there's that. And of course, I mean, there's a little bit too of how good of a trade value can I get for each, the PS4 and the Xbox. I have to see about that as well. If I can't get anything even remotely fair on it, then that's also something to consider. I'm sure if I look long enough, I can get something, whether it's directly to Sony or whatever it may be. I'd have to think that it's going to end up being a relatively common thing, especially the more and more of the Microsoft games switch to PlayStation, of trading in the Xbox to Sony. I'm sure they could still find a way to make money off that, and it also become a popular thing, so it's more of a win-win for the consumer and the company there. See, I guess. But overall, yeah, that's the only way to consider. And there's no guarantees I'd even do it anyway. I mean, if it turns out to where by the time that were to happen, that there starts being a whole heck of a heap of recalls on PS5, or it just turns out that the consoles are starting to fail real quick and all that. If it turns out that this Xbox Series happens to have a lot better reliability than the PS5, then that would be a turnoff as well. But from how I understand it, they seem both, Microsoft and Sony, consoles, at least since last generation of like PS4 and Xbox One, both of them of the last generation and this current one seem to be fairly reliable, at least for now. So that's decent, I guess. So obviously, yeah, there's a lot of little factors that go in there, but overall, the main one is if it gets motorsport and flight simulator. Granted, even at this point, like I said, it's not looking like motorsport is the dandiest games, but even of the decent amount of time that I played it, I would have played it a lot more because I, even at that amount of time, was already pretty caught being good at the game. Not as good as Gran Turismo, but obviously I played it a lot less. But I mean, you even saw individual videos of, in a rare instance, I could have actually have already been competitive on Motorsport. And there was two completely different realms of competitiveness on there too. There was a slow car on an oval, which is more about carrying momentum and getting the lines right. And then there's F1 on a short track on Suzuki East. So two completely different ways in which of driving style I was both able to get in the top 10 worldwide with, even of the, I wouldn't say little amount of time, but I think it ended up around about 100 hours of playing Motorsport. So even if the game ain't the dandiest, I'm still pretty dandy at the game. That in of itself has value of it as well, because frankly, why I'm not looking all that likely to actually be able to make the money back nowadays, like of how I consider it all days to get games, because if the content is good enough they can make with it and be able to get crypto to equal or more value of the game. So if I consider that in there too, like how I just make fun of the 2K games last few years, I didn't particularly enjoy the experience of playing them. If I could just make fun of it and enjoy the more comedic type videos I can make from it, then so what? Because back then it'd make the cryptocurrency too. I mean, there's a difference with Forza, just in that simply that's probably the game that I'm second best at, albeit not have even played it all that much. Like I said, the thing that I'm best at in life is Gran Turismo. I've said that before, and definitely take that as you may. If I put more time into it, there might be a genuine argument that the thing that I'm second best in life at is Forza. Probably more on the motorsport side of things. So, yeah. So I'm sure you can do deductive reasoning and no, I'm not going to play Horizon 5 anytime soon because I'm not going to buy it outright for the Series S because it wouldn't be playing it online anyway with that whole thing. And yeah, unless they can somehow fix that out of the blue, the credit card thing. And if it doesn't, obviously make it a video then saying that it's fixed and then back to playing it more. Also the same for PlayStation, but I don't have confidence of either of those being fixed. So yeah, for the foreseeable future of what videos you see on YouTube of Horizon 5 are actually from like 2020, I guess early 3. Yeah, like early 2023, like at the latest, pretty much, of Horizon 5. So there's that, folks, and then obviously nothing for the Labyrinth Odyssey side of things because y'all got that first. Because again, the Series S ain't the dandiest of making content. It isn't, even now, from how I understand it, still doesn't go directly to YouTube, so yeah. Well, there are some positives for the Series S compared to PS5. Overall, the PS5 does seem to be the superior console, and especially if it can get the games from the other console, so you know reason not to trade stuff in if I can get some good value on it. If it's anything over $200, again, I'm kind of up in the air about the controller, but I'll say $200 for the console as a decent point, and a little bit of wiggle room there. 200 or under, and consider a new one. But I mean, like I said, especially like 15 years from now, and the PS5s are jailbroken, and it's one of those things of, oh, I can play Gran Turismo 8 online with a jailbroken PS5, then yeah, if I can buy then whatever inflation ends up being the equivalent of like $100, I can do a jailbroken PS5 and play Gran Turismo 8 online, especially because probably that would be the first time I'd play it. The first time that I get a PS5, whether it's a year from now or 15, would be the first time I'd play GT8, so it'd be new to me. Yeah, probably. I'd say there's an above average percent chance that eventually I'd have a PS5. But I'd say the odds are still pretty cotton picking low of it actually being a new one of any time fairly soon. So, of course, again, that ain't the dandiest of content, but I'm still aware what's going on. As little money spent possible, but frankly, it kind of helps for the long term money spent if I do get a PS5, if I can get a good deal with other trades in too, because that extends the amount of playing the games. Technically speaking, I would assume that Horizon Online and stuff like that would end at the same time on the Xbox as it would PS5. If the player base is bigger on PS5, then that's something straightforward to consider as well. So it's more of a long-term investment to maybe saving money on the long term if the PS5 gets more Microsoft games and if I can get a good deal trading. So by kind of counteractive of there's a little money spent as possible in the short term, in the long term it might be a good investment. But we'll see. And overall, we'll see if it ends up being worth the yeehaw. It might be nothing at all. We really don't know yet. So, tentative, maybe just maybe, yeehaw.